20 things from the 1960s black kids today will never understand. What if I told you the history you were taught was sanitized to keep you comfortable? We celebrate the icons, but we ignore the raw, dangerous fire that actually fueled their revolution. From Nina Simone's volcanic rage to Malcolm X's uncompromising defiance, these weren't just heroes, they were outlaws to a system that wanted them silent at birth. Welcome back to Black Excellence Legends, where we strip away the myths to reveal the gritty truth of our ancestors. Stop scrolling, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell right now because we're about to dive deep into the forbidden chapters of Black history. Sam Cooke. Sam Cooke was far more than a quintessential crooner. He was a visionary pioneer who effectively bridged the chasm between sacred gospel traditions and secular pop success. Born in Mississippi and raised in Chicago, his crystalline tenor voice possessed an effortless fluidity that captivated listeners across racial divides. In an era where black musicians were frequently exploited by predatory contracts, Cooke exhibited remarkable foresight by founding his own record label, SAR Records, and a publishing company, Cags Music. This audacious move toward financial autonomy was a radical act of self-determination during the height of the Jim Crow era, ensuring he maintained creative jurisdiction over his intellectual property. While his early hits, like You Send Me, were sugary melodic triumphs, Cooke's artistic trajectory shifted toward a deeper social consciousness as the civil rights movement intensified. His experiences with systemic prejudice, such as being turned away from whites-only establishments, fueled a profound internal transformation. This culminated in the composition of A Change Is Gonna Come, a monumental anthem that echoed the yearning and weary resilience of an oppressed people. The song's soaring orchestration and haunting lyrics transformed it into an eternal prayer for justice, resonating through the decades as a symbol of hope. Tragically, Cooke was killed in 1964 at the age of 33, just before his most significant work became a cornerstone of American history. He left behind a legacy that transcended mere entertainment. To black children of the 1960s, he represented the pinnacle of elegance, intellect, and masculine grace. He demonstrated that a black man could be both a heartthrob and a shrewd executive, a poet and a protester. His life was a testament to the fact that artistry, when paired with conviction, has the power to dismantle barriers and provide a voice to the voiceless. Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin was far more than a vocal powerhouse. She was a tectonic force whose seismic influence reshaped the cultural and political landscape of the 20th century. Emerging from the gospel-soaked pews of her father's Detroit church, she possessed an unmatched ability to infuse secular melodies with divine urgency. In 1967, her explosive interpretation of Respect transformed a simple romantic demand into a fierce universal manifesto for human dignity. This track became the definitive soundtrack for both the civil rights movement and the burgeoning feminist wave, providing a rhythmic backbone to the struggle for equity. Franklin didn't just sing songs, she baptized them in a fire of authenticity that demanded the world acknowledge the brilliance and autonomy of black womanhood. Beyond the recording studio, Aretha was a silent financier and vocal champion of the liberation struggle. She utilized her immense platform to advocate for activists, famously offering to post bail for Angela Davis and maintaining a close supportive kinship with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Her voice served as a sonic healing balm during the nation's most fractured moments, bridging the divide between the spiritual and the political. By commanding the global stage with her furs gowns and Queen of Soul title, she dismantled the derogatory stereotypes often thrust upon black women of that era. She proved that one could be unapologetically rooted in the black church tradition while attaining the highest honors of international stardom. To the youth of the 1960s, Aretha represented the literal sound of freedom, a voice that was both a velvet caress and a thunderous clarion call. Her technical mastery of the piano and her improvisational genius solidified her status as a formidable architect of American music. When she performed, she carried the collective aspirations of a people on her shoulders, turning every concert into a site of communal empowerment. Her legacy remains an enduring blueprint for how art can serve as a catalyst for social evolution, reminding every generation that dignity is a non-negotiable birthright. Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy Davis Jr. was a breathtaking force of nature who shattered the glass ceiling of the entertainment industry long before the term existed. As a pivotal member of the legendary Rat Pack, He navigated the treacherous waters of mid-century stardom with a level of virtuosity that remains unparalleled. He was a quintessential triple threat, an explosive tap dancer, a vocal chameleon capable of profound emotional depth, and a charismatic actor. In an era when Las Vegas stages were heavily segregated, Davis famously refused to perform at venues that denied entry to Black patrons, leveraging his immense celebrity to force the integration of the very casinos that showcased his brilliance. His presence on screen and stage was a defiant act of visibility, proving that Black excellence could command the most prestigious spotlights in the world. Beyond the glitz of show business, Davis was a dedicated foot soldier for the cause of social justice. He walked the front lines of history, participating in the 1963 March on Washington and consistently funneling substantial financial resources into the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Despite facing vitriolic backlash for his interracial marriage and his refusal to conform to the narrow expectations of either white or Black society, he remained steadfast in his individuality. He was a pioneer of cool buying, blending sophisticated tailoring with the raw kinetic energy that mesmerized global audiences. Davis didn't just break barriers. He dismantled them with a smile and a shuffle, showing a generation of Black youth that their talents deserve the world's undivided attention. For children of the 1960s, Sammy Davis Jr. was the embodiment of limitless potential. He navigated the complexities of being a Black icon in a fractured America with a mixture of grit and grace. Whether he was delivering a powerhouse rendition of The Candyman or engaging in rapid-fire banter on television, he exuded a sense of mastery that was deeply aspirational. He taught his admirers that true artistry knows no color line and that dignity is maintained by refusing to be sidelined. His legacy is a vibrant mosaic of courage and creativity, reminding us that the brightest stars are often those who have to burn through the thickest clouds of prejudice to be seen. Nina Simone. Nina Simone was an uncompromising sonic revolutionary whose artistry transcended the boundaries of jazz, classical, and folk to become the searing conscience of a movement. Originally a child prodigy who aspired to be the first Black female classical concert pianist, her trajectory was redirected when racial prejudice denied her entry into the elite halls of academia. This early encounter with systemic exclusion ignited a lifelong fire of resistance. Her voice, a rich and husky contralto, possessed a singular ability to channel raw, unfiltered human truth, ranging from the tenderest vulnerability to a righteous, volcanic fury. She did not merely perform music. She utilized it as a powerful weapon to dismantle the psychological shackles of oppression, demanding that her audience confront the uncomfortable realities of the American landscape. As the struggle for civil rights reached a fever pitch, Simone transitioned from a cabaret star to a radical protest icon. Her seminal composition, Mississippi Goddam, written in a white heat of anger following the 1963 Birmingham church bombing and the assassination of Medgar Evers, became a courageous frontal assault on the status quo. She famously declared that an artist's duty is to reflect the times, and she lived this ethos with fierce intensity. By integrating African-inspired aesthetics into her performances, adorned in bold head wraps and intricate jewelry, she became a visual vanguard for the Black is Beautiful movement. Her presence was a radical reclamation of identity, proving that high art and political activism were not only compatible, but inextricably linked in the pursuit of liberation. For the Black youth of the 1960s, Nina Simone offered a blueprint for radical self-love and intellectual defiance. She was a figure of immense psychological depth who refused to sanitize her message for the comfort of the mainstream. Her songs, such as To Be Young, Gifted, and Black, served as melodic affirmations that countered the dehumanizing narratives of the era. She taught a generation that their anger was valid, their heritage was regal, and their voices were essential. Though she eventually lived in self-imposed exile to escape the suffocating weight of American racism, her legacy remains a foundational pillar of Black creative expression. She remains a haunting, beautiful reminder that true freedom begins with the courage to speak one's truth without apology. Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was the moral compass of a fracturing nation, a transcendent orator whose philosophy of nonviolent resistance fundamentally restructured the American legal and social landscape. While many viewed him through the singular lens of his "I Have a Dream" speech, he was an incredibly complex strategic thinker who drew inspiration from Gandhian principles and Christian ethics to dismantle the structural scaffolding of Jim Crow. His leadership during the Montgomery bus boycott and the formation of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, SCLC, transformed local grievances into a unified national mandate for equity. King possessed the rare ability to articulate the profound suffering of an oppressed people while simultaneously appealing to the dormant conscience of the broader public, demanding that America reconcile its soaring rhetoric of liberty with its grim reality of racial subjugation. Beyond his iconic marches, King was an increasingly radical critic of economic injustice and militarism. As the 1960s progressed, he expanded his vision through the Poor People's Campaign, recognizing that legal desegregation was a hollow victory if systemic poverty remained an insurmountable barrier. He endured relentless surveillance by the FBI, physical assaults, and repeated incarcerations, yet he remained steadfast in his conviction that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice. His Nobel Peace Prize in 1964 solidified his status as a global statesman, but it was his unwavering presence on the front lines from the bridge in Selma to the streets of Memphis that earned him the eternal devotion of the Black community. He was the voice that spoke truth to power when power was at its most deafening. For the Black youth of the 1960s, Dr. King was a figure of messianic hope and intellectual gravity. He taught a generation that their greatest weapon was not the fist, but their unshakable dignity and organized collective action. His tragic assassination in 1968 sent shockwaves through the world, leaving a void that felt impossible to fill. Yet his martyrdom cemented his teachings into the bedrock of global human rights movements. He proved that a single voice tempered by love and sharpened by intellect could mobilize millions to demand the impossible. His legacy is not merely a holiday or a monument. It is a living, breathing challenge to every generation to continue the arduous work of building the beloved community where justice is not a privilege, but a universal reality. Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks was far more than a weary seamstress who happened to remain seated. She was a deliberate, disciplined, and seasoned political strategist whose act of defiance was a calculated strike against the heart of segregation. Long before the historic evening of December 1st, 1955, Parks was an active investigator for the NAACP, documenting harrowing cases of racial violence and sexual assault against Black women in the South. Her refusal to relinquish her bus seat to a white passenger in Montgomery was not a spontaneous outburst of fatigue, but rather a courageous culmination of years of grassroots organizing. She possessed a resolute stillness that acted as a catalyst for the Montgomery bus boycott, a 381-day mobilization that effectively bankrupted the city's transit system and birthed the modern civil rights movement. Her activism came at a staggering personal cost. Following the boycott, Parks and her husband were blacklisted, faced persistent death threats, and were eventually forced to relocate to Detroit to find employment. Yet her spirit remained unyielding. In the North, she continued her crusade focusing on housing discrimination, job inequality, and the burgeoning Black Power movement. Parks was a bridge between generations, a woman who understood that the struggle for liberation required both the patience of a marathon runner and the audacity of a revolutionary. She shattered the myth of the docile Black woman, proving that dignity is maintained through the refusal to cooperate with injustice, regardless of the consequences. For the Black youth of the 1960s, Rosa Parks was the mother of the movement, an icon of moral clarity and unwavering strength. She taught a generation that leadership does not always require a microphone or a pulpit. Sometimes it only requires the courage to stay planted in your truth. Her life was a testament to the power of the individual to ignite collective transformation. By simply saying no to a system designed to make her feel small, she empowered millions to stand up and demand their full citizenship. Her legacy serves as an enduring reminder that the smallest act of resistance can create a ripple effect that eventually topples the mightiest walls of oppression. Malcolm X. Malcolm X was an uncompromising firebrand whose intellectual evolution and fierce advocacy for Black nationalism provided a radical alternative to the nonviolent mainstream of the 1960s. Emerging from a turbulent youth to become the most charismatic spokesperson for the Nation of Islam, he articulated the rage and frustration of the urban Black masses with a precision that was both terrifying and exhilarating to the American public. Unlike those who pleaded for integration, Malcolm demanded total self-determination and psychological liberation. He famously championed the doctrine of, by any means necessary, arguing that the right to self-defense was a fundamental human prerogative when the state failed to protect its citizens from systemic violence. His voice was a rhythmic, razor-sharp instrument that dismantled the internalized inferiority complexes born from centuries of white supremacy. As his perspective broadened through his pilgrimage to Mecca and his travels across the African continent, Malcolm's ideology underwent a profound metamorphosis. He moved toward a more global Pan-Africanist framework, founding the Organization of Afro-American Unity to link the domestic struggle for civil rights with the international fight against colonialism. He transformed from a separatist into a global human rights advocate, yet he never softened his critique of the structural rot within American democracy. He was a man of constant self-reinvention, possessing the rare humility to publicly admit when his previous views had been too narrow. Despite being relentlessly targeted by law enforcement and facing internal threats within his former organization, he remained an unyielding sentinel for the dignity of the African diaspora until his assassination in 1965. For the Black youth of the 1960s, Malcolm X was the ultimate symbol of Black power and unapologetic masculinity. He taught a generation to stop seeking approval from a system that did not value them, and instead to build their own institutions in pride. His autobiography, a masterpiece of self-reflection, became a secular Bible for those seeking a path to empowerment through intellect and self-discipline. He showed that a Black man could be brilliant, articulate, and fiercely defiant without compromise. Malcolm X's legacy remains a cornerstone of radical social thought, reminding us that true freedom is not a gift bestowed by the oppressor, but a right seized by the oppressed through the reclamation of their own identity and agency. Bull Connor. Theophilus Eugene Bull Connor was the visceral embodiment of white supremacy's dying gasps, a man whose name became globally synonymous with the violent enforcement of racial subjugation. As the Commissioner of Public Safety in Birmingham, Alabama, he operated not merely as a law enforcement official, but as a domestic terrorist for the status quo. Connor's philosophy was simple: any challenge to the racial hierarchy was to be met with overwhelming state-sanctioned force. He famously transformed the streets of Birmingham into a theater of cruelty, utilizing high-pressure fire hoses capable of stripping bark off trees and knocking teeth out of mouths against peaceful demonstrators. By ordering the deployment of snarling German shepherds against unarmed citizens, including children, he provided the world with an unfiltered, televised look at the savage reality behind the order he claimed to protect. Image showing the contrast between nonviolent protesters and the military-style equipment used by Bull Connor's forces. Ironically, Connor's unrestrained bigotry acted as an accidental catalyst for the very movement he sought to extinguish. His strategic incompetence during the 1963 Children's Crusade backfired spectacularly. The horrifying footage of Black youth being brutalized under his command shocked the international conscience and forced the Kennedy administration to act. Connor believed that escalating bail amounts and filling jails would drain the spirit of the movement, but he underestimated the inexhaustible resolve of a people who had already lost everything but their dignity. He was a man out of time, clinging to a crumbling edifice of Jim Crow, while the rest of the world watched in revulsion. His eventual removal from office and the dismantling of Birmingham's segregation laws proved that while hatred can occupy a position of power, it cannot survive the relentless light of public exposure. For the Black youth of the 1960s, Bull Connor was the literal bogeyman of the state, representing the constant threat of physical harm that shadowed their daily existence. He taught them that the law was not always synonymous with justice, and that those in uniform could be the primary agents of chaos. Yet in facing him, they also discovered their own collective power. By refusing to run from his hoses and dogs, they proved that moral authority is infinitely stronger than physical intimidation. Connor's legacy remains a grim historical landmark, serving as a cautionary reminder of what happens when systemic racism is given an unchecked badge and a baton. He remains the definitive antagonist of the civil rights era, whose cruelty unintentionally paved the way for the legislative triumphs that finally began to break his world apart. Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford occupied a singular position in the 1970s political landscape, serving as a transitional figure who sought to stabilize a nation reeling from the dual traumas of the Watergate scandal and the tumultuous social upheavals of the preceding decade. Though he ascended to the presidency in 1974 without being elected to the office or the vice presidency, his short tenure was marked by a deliberate attempt to heal the fractured American psyche. For the Black community, Ford's most enduring symbolic legacy was his official recognition of Black History Month in 1976. By urging Americans to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans, he moved the celebration from a grassroots community-level observance to a federally sanctioned national event acknowledging the central role of African American heritage in the American story. Despite this historic gesture, Ford's relationship with the civil rights movement was complex and often characterized by a more conservative, cautious approach to federal intervention. He famously struggled with the issue of busing, the practice of transporting students to different school districts to achieve racial integration. While Ford maintained that he supported the goals of the Brown versus Board of Education ruling, he vocally opposed court-ordered busing, reflecting the deep-seated anxieties of many white constituents. This stance created a palpable tension with the Black leaders and activists who viewed federal enforcement as the only viable path toward true educational equity. His administration reflected the post-civil rights fatigue of the mid-70s, where the focus shifted from legislative breakthroughs to the difficult, often stalled process of implementation and economic survival. For the Black youth of the 1960s who were entering adulthood in the mid-70s, Gerald Ford represented a shift toward a more quiet institutional form of governance. He lacked the visionary rhetoric of his predecessors, but offered a sense of normalcy after years of televised violence and political assassinations. His decision to pardon Richard Nixon remained highly controversial, but his extension of the Voting Rights Act in 1975 provided a necessary safeguard for the gains made during the previous decade. Ford was not a radical reformer, but a pragmatic gatekeeper who understood that the nation could not move forward without at least acknowledging the immense contributions and the historical suffering of its Black citizens. His legacy is one of steadying the ship of state, ensuring that the progress of the 1960s remained anchored in the law as the country navigated new uncertain waters. Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye was a transformational genius who evolved from Motown's Prince of Soul into a profound musical philosopher capable of capturing the spiritual and political turbulence of a nation. Initially celebrated for his polished romantic duets and suave stage presence, Gaye possessed a sophisticated musicality that eventually felt stifled by the rigid hit-making formula of the Berry Gordy era. As the 1960s dissolved into the 1970s, fueled by his brother's harrowing letters from the Vietnam War and the escalating racial strife in American streets, he staged a creative rebellion. This resulted in What's Going On, a landmark concept album that shifted the focus of popular music from escapism to visceral social commentary. His voice, a silky yet pained multi-octave instrument, became the sonic vessel for a collective plea for peace, ecology, and racial understanding. Image showing Marvin Gaye in his iconic 1970s aesthetic denim beard and thoughtful expression. Beyond his role as a hitmaker, Gaye was a master of self-exploration who dared to weave themes of divinity, sensuality, and sorrow into a seamless tapestry. He redefined the Black male archetype in music, moving away from the invulnerable performer toward a figure of raw, transparent vulnerability. His work addressed the internal conflicts of the human experience, the struggle between the flesh and the spirit, making him deeply relatable to a generation grappling with their own identities. Despite battling profound personal demons, including substance abuse and a volatile relationship with his father, his artistry remained a beacon of excellence. He proved that Black music could be intellectually demanding and symphonically complex without losing its visceral, rhythmic connection to the soul of the community. For the Black youth of the 1960s, Marvin Gaye was the voice of their evolving consciousness. He provided the soundtrack for both their protests and their private moments of reflection. He taught them that it was possible to be both a sex symbol and a social critic, a superstar and a seeker of truth. His tragic death in 1984 at the hands of his father silenced one of the most expressive voices in history, but his influence remains ubiquitous in every genre from R&B to hip-hop. Gay's legacy is an enduring reminder that the most powerful music is that which dares to ask the difficult questions, forcing us to look at the world and ourselves with a mixture of honesty and love. James Brown. James Brown was a relentless kinetic phenomenon whose uncompromising rhythmic innovations fundamentally altered the DNA of global popular music. Known as the hardest working man in show business, he moved beyond the structures of traditional R&B to invent funk, a genre that prioritized the heavy downbeat that became the heartbeat of Black resistance and joy. Brown was a master of discipline and stagecraft, leading his band with the precision of a military general. His performances were sweat-soaked rituals of liberation featuring gravity-defying splits and a raw, percussive vocal style that mimicked the urgency of a street preacher. In an era of profound transition, he provided the sonic architecture for a new Black identity, one that was physically powerful and unapologetically vibrant. Image showing James Brown's iconic cape routine, a symbol of his theatrical flair and endurance. While his musical contributions were monumental, Brown's role as a cultural statesman during the late 1960s was equally transformative. Following the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., his televised concert in Boston was credited with preventing widespread civil unrest, proving that his influence transcended the Billboard charts. His 1968 anthem, "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud," was a cultural earthquake. It was the first time a mainstream superstar had used such explicit language to command racial self-respect. Brown also championed the Black capitalism movement in owning radio stations and restaurants, demonstrating to a generation that artistic success should be paired with economic ownership. He was a flawed, complex human, but his dedication to Black self-reliance and his refusal to dilute his sound for white comfort made him a secular saint of the streets. For the Black youth of the 1960s, James Brown was the embodiment of raw energy and masculine pride. He taught them that their culture was not something to be hidden, but something to be celebrated with maximum volume and precision. Every grunt scream and rhythmic pop was an assertion of life in a system that often tried to suppress it. His legacy is the foundation of hip-hop and modern dance music, a testament to the idea that rhythm is a form of truth-telling. He remains the definitive godfather of soul, a man who turned the struggle of the Black experience into a rhythmic force of nature that the entire world was forced to dance to. Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was far more than a heavyweight pugilist. He was a global cultural phenomenon who utilized the boxing ring as a platform for radical political expression. Born Cassius Clay in the segregated South, he possessed a revolutionary combination of blinding speed and poetic wit that dismantled the trope of the silent Black athlete. By joining the Nation of Islam and shedding his slave name Bandawan, Ali asserted a psychological autonomy that terrified the American establishment. His rejection of the Vietnam War draft on religious and moral grounds, famously stating, "I ain't got no quarrel with them Viet Cong," was a seismic act of conscience that cost him his prime fighting years and his title. Yet this sacrifice transformed him from a sports star into a global symbol of anti-colonial resistance and principled defiance. Image showing Muhammad Ali in his iconic anchor punch stance or his defiant pose over Sonny Liston. In the ring, Ali's float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. Philosophy redefined the sweet science, proving that intelligence and grace were as lethal as brute power. Outside the ropes, he was a master of the psychological warfare of rhetoric, using rhyme and bravado to challenge white supremacy's attempt to humble him. His return to the sport in the 1970s, culminating in historic bouts like the Rumble in the Jungle, solidified his status as the greatest of all time. Despite the physical toll of Parkinson's disease later in life, he remained a tireless messenger of peace and humanitarianism. He proved that a Black man could be unapologetically arrogant about his genius while remaining deeply committed to the liberation of his people, bridging the gap between professional sports and global human rights activism. For the Black youth of the 1960s, Muhammad Ali was the ultimate avatar of fearlessness. He taught a generation that their bodies and minds belonged to themselves, not to a state or a corporation. He showed them that beauty, strength, and conviction could coexist in a single, magnificent frame. Every victory in the ring felt like a collective win against the forces of prejudice that sought to keep them marginalized. His legacy is an enduring blueprint for the activist athlete, reminding us that greatness is measured not just by the trophies one collects, but by the courage one displays when standing up for a truth that is unpopular. He remains a singular, incandescent figure whose spirit continues to inspire anyone fighting against the odds for their own dignity. Diana Ross. Diana Ross was a transformative force who recalibrated the global perception of Black femininity, evolving from the lead voice of the Supremes into a singular, multifaceted icon of the entertainment world. As the centerpiece of Motown's most successful group, she channeled a polished, sophisticated aesthetic that dismantled the restrictive caricatures often imposed on Black women. Her voice, a distinct, cooing soprano, carried a deceptive strength that anchored a historic string of 12 number-one hits. Ross didn't just sing about love. She projected an aspirational image of poise and high-fashion elegance that provided a visual blueprint for Black excellence during the height of the 1960s. By dominating the pop charts, she proved that Black artistry could achieve universal appeal without sacrificing its inherent soul or cultural specificity. Image showing Diana Ross in her signature 1970s look, voluminous hair sequins and dramatic eyelashes. As she transitioned into a solo career in Hollywood stardom, Ross continued to shatter institutional barriers. Her Academy Award-nominated portrayal of Billie Holiday in Lady Sings the Blues, 1972, demonstrated a profound dramatic depth, while her role in The Wiz, 1978, solidified her status as a cinematic luminary. She was a pioneer of the diva archetype, reclaiming the term as a symbol of professional mastery, meticulous control, and unyielding ambition. Her stage presence, defined by grand gestures, shimmering gowns, and a magnetic charisma, turned every performance into a celebration of Black womanhood's limitless potential. She navigated the male-dominated machinery of the music industry with a shrewd intelligence, eventually becoming one of the few artists of her era to gain significant creative and financial autonomy over her sprawling legacy. For the Black youth of the 1960s, Diana Ross was a figure of luminous possibility. She taught a generation of girls that they deserved the finest fabrics, the brightest spotlights, and the most expansive dreams. In a society that frequently tried to dim their light, Ross stood as a radiant, unapologetic beacon of success. She showed that a Black woman could be both a vulnerable romantic and a formidable business powerhouse, a global trendsetter and a cultural ambassador. Her legacy is woven into the fabric of modern pop culture, influencing everyone from Beyoncé to contemporary fashion designers. She remains a living testament to the idea that glamour is not merely superficial, but a radical tool of self-definition and a defiant assertion of one's own worth. Ray Charles. Ray Charles was a foundational musical force who dismantled rigid genre boundaries to redefine the very core of American artistry. Despite losing his sight as a child, he possessed a timeless musical vision that allowed him to fuse the spiritual intensity of gospel with the secular grit of the blues, effectively birthing soul music. His audacity lay not only in his raw, raspy vocals or virtuosic piano skills, but in his determination to command absolute creative control. In an era where Black artists were frequently exploited, Charles negotiated historic contracts that granted him ownership of his own master tapes, a revolutionary act of financial autonomy at the time. In the 1960s, Charles took a controversial yet brilliant leap into country music with his album Modern Sounds in Country and Western Music. By infusing white melodies with deep Black soul, he proved that music is a universal language, capable of healing racial fractures. He was more than an entertainer. He was a symbol of political courage, famously refusing to perform at segregated venues in Georgia and risking legal repercussions to defend the dignity of his people. Ray Charles transformed personal adversity and social barriers into radiant art, asserting that true genius is never confined by darkness or skin color. For the Black youth of the 1960s, Ray Charles was the ultimate embodiment of intellect and resilience. He taught them that they could master any artistic space, from smoky juke joints to prestigious symphonic halls. The image of him swaying at his piano with his signature dark glasses and a brilliant smile became an icon of unrestrained freedom. He didn't need to see the world to move it. Instead, he forced the world to acknowledge and respect the depth of the Black soul through every note. His legacy is a blueprint for constant innovation, reminding us that true greatness begins when we dare to break the molds that society has cast for us. Mahalia Jackson. Mahalia Jackson was the undisputed queen of gospel, a woman whose earth-shaking contralto voice served as the literal and metaphorical heartbeat of the civil rights movement. Born into the poverty of New Orleans, she remained steadfast in her refusal to sing secular blues music, believing her talent was a divine gift intended solely for the glory of God. Yet her spiritual conviction did not keep her from the front lines of social justice. As a close confidant and spiritual advisor to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., she used her immense global fame to fund movements and provide the sonic courage necessary to endure systemic brutality. When Mahalia sang, she didn't just perform a song, she invoked a sanctuary, turning crowded churches and dusty protest lines into spaces of transcendent hope. Her most significant historical contribution occurred during the 1963 March on Washington. Before Dr. King began his prepared remarks, Jackson delivered a soul-stirring rendition of "I've been buked and I've been scorned." More crucially, as King spoke, it was Mahalia who shouted from behind him, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." This prompted him to depart from his manuscript and deliver the "I Have a Dream" section that defined American history. Her voice was the bridge between the sacred and the political, proving that faith was not an escape from reality, but a fuel for changing it. She shattered the boundaries of gospel music, becoming the first of her genre to perform at Carnegie Hall and garnering international acclaim, all while maintaining her roots in the Black church tradition. For the Black youth of the 1960s, Mahalia Jackson represented the Rock of Ages, an unshakable pillar of dignity and spiritual power. She taught a generation that their cultural heritage was regal and that their songs could topple walls of oppression. Her presence was a reminder that the struggle for freedom was also a spiritual journey requiring a fortitude that could only be found in collective belief. When she sang at Dr. King's funeral in 1968, her voice carried the collective grief and the weary resilience of an entire people. Her legacy is an enduring testament to the idea that the greatest use of a voice is to lift others up, ensuring that the light of justice is never extinguished by the shadows of hate. Sidney Poitier. Sidney Poitier was a singular transformative presence in Hollywood who dismantled decades of derogatory racial caricatures through sheer artistic excellence and an unyielding sense of personal decorum. Emerging in an era when Black actors were largely relegated to subservient or buffoonish roles, Poitier insisted on portraying characters with profound intellectual depth, moral complexity, and professional authority. His 1963 Historic Academy Award for Best Actor in Lilies of the Field was a seismic shift in the industry, signaling that a Black man could be the definitive center of an American narrative. Poitier didn't just act, he negotiated the visual representation of an entire race, carefully selecting roles that reflected the poise and humanity that the segregated society sought to deny. The year 1967 marked the zenith of his cultural influence, as he starred in three landmark films, To Sir with Love, In the Heat of the Night, and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, that directly confronted the nation's racial anxieties. As Detective Virgil Tibbs, he delivered the iconic line, "They call me Mr. Tibb," a declarative strike against the infantilizing language of Jim Crow. Poitier's performance was a masterclass in controlled intensity, showing that a Black man could command respect in hostile environments through competence and composure. He navigated the immense pressure of being a symbol with remarkable grace and essentially forcing white audiences to view Black people as peers, professionals, and protagonists in the grand drama of human life. For the Black youth of the 1960s, Sidney Poitier was the embodiment of Black excellence long before the term became a social media hashtag. He provided a visual counter-narrative to the violence of the evening news, appearing on the silver screen as a doctor, a detective, or a teacher. He taught a generation that their speech, their carriage, and their intellect were their most potent tools for social navigation. His legacy is a foundational pillar for every Black actor who followed, from Denzel Washington to Viola Davis. Poitier proved that the highest form of protest is often the refusal to be seen as anything less than magnificent, ensuring that his name would forever be synonymous with the triumph of the human spirit over institutional prejudice. Stevie Wonder. Stevie Wonder is a transcendent polymath whose prodigious talent transformed the landscape of modern music, from a youthful curiosity into a sophisticated global phenomenon. Emerging as Little Stevie Wonder, a harmonica-playing child sensation, he successfully navigated the treacherous transition into adulthood by demanding unprecedented creative autonomy from Motown. This resulted in a classic period in the 1970s that is arguably the most prolific streak of genius in recording history. A self-contained orchestra wonder utilized early synthesizers to create lush organic soundscapes that felt both futuristic and deeply rooted in the Black experience. His music was a kaleidoscopic fusion of funk, jazz, soul, and pop, held together by a voice of crystalline clarity and a spirit of irrepressible optimism that refused to be dimmed by his physical blindness. Beyond the technical mastery of his talking synthesizers and complex rhythms, Wonder was a fierce advocate for social harmony and historical justice. His 1980 anthem, Happy Birthday, was not merely a celebratory track. It was a strategic political weapon used to spearhead the campaign to make Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday a federal holiday. His lyrics frequently tackled systemic racism, urban poverty, and the necessity of love as a radical political force as seen in masterpieces like Living for the City. Wonder proved that Black music could be as intellectually rigorous as classical compositions while remaining commercially dominant. He bridged the gap between technology and the human heart, showing that innovation is most powerful when it serves the cause of human connection and liberation. For the Black youth of the 1960s who grew up alongside him, Stevie Wonder was a symbol of limitless sensory perception. He taught a generation that vision is not required to see the truth, and that music could be a sanctuary of joy even in a world of struggle. He demonstrated that a Black man could be a technological pioneer, a lyrical poet, and a world-class entertainer simultaneously. His legacy is a vibrant tapestry of humanitarianism and artistry, reminding us that the most profound revolutions are often those that make the world sing together. He remains a living legend whose influence is embedded in the DNA of every artist who dares to dream beyond the boundaries of genre and expectation. Otis Redding. Otis Redding was a titan of the stack sound, a vocalist of such immense visceral power that he could transform a simple melody into a profound spiritual experience. Known for his begging style, a rhythmic, urgent delivery that combined the fervor of a Southern preacher with the sensitivity of a poet, Redding was the definitive voice of gritty, authentic soul. His performances were legendary for their stamina and emotional transparency, characterized by brassy arrangements and a stomping backbeat that became the hallmark of the Memphis sound. Unlike the polished charm school aesthetic of Motown, Redding's music felt raw and unvarnished, capturing the joy, pain, and yearning of the Black working class. He was a master of pacing, able to build a ballad from a whisper to a thunderous, heart-wrenching crescendo. In 1967, Redding achieved a historic breakthrough at the Monterey Pop Festival, where he captivated a predominantly white hippie audience, proving that the soul of Black music possessed a universal magnetism. This performance shattered cultural barriers just months before his tragic death in a plane crash at the age of 26. His posthumous masterpiece, Sittin' on the Dock of the Bay, revealed a new introspective direction in his artistry. It was a song of weary reflection and quiet solitude, reflecting the internal world of a man navigating a rapidly changing America. Beyond his voice, Redding was a savvy businessman and a gifted songwriter, penning Respect, which Aretha Franklin later transformed into a global anthem, demonstrating his profound understanding of the human desire for dignity. For the Black youth of the 1960s, Otis Redding was the embodiment of soulful authenticity. He taught them that vulnerability was a form of strength, and that the voice was a tool for emotional liberation. His success was a source of immense pride as he remained deeply rooted in his Southern heritage while conquering the international stage. Despite his brief life, his influence on music is immeasurable, providing the foundational grit for everything from classic rock to modern R&B. He remains the eternal king of soul, a man who poured his entire being into every note, reminding us that true art is not measured by its longevity, but by the intensity and honesty with which it is delivered. Chuck Berry. Chuck Berry was the ultimate sonic bridge builder, a lyrical poet and guitar virtuoso who synthesized blues, country, and R&B into the explosive DNA of rock and roll. While many artists contributed to the genre, Berry was its primary architect, codifying the visual and musical language that would define youth culture globally. His double-stop guitar riffs became the foundational vocabulary for every rock guitarist who followed from Keith Richards to Jimi Hendrix. Barry was a master storyteller. His lyrics weren't just about teenage romance and fast cars, they were sharp, witty observations of American life delivered with a diction that was so clear it intentionally bypassed the racial gatekeeping of 1950s radio. Beyond his musical innovation, Barry was a figure of profound cultural defiance. In a segregated America, his music forced a physical and social integration on the dance floor. He was a savvy and often difficult businessman who demanded payment in cash and refused to play with anything less than a professional backing band, a defensive posture born from years of navigating a predatory industry. His signature duck walk and his charismatic stage presence transformed the guitar from a mere instrument into a symbol of rebellion and freedom. Despite legal troubles and the systemic racism that often sought to marginalize his contributions, Barry's influence remained undeniable. When NASA launched the Voyager spacecraft in 1977, they included his track Johnny Be Good on the Golden Record, effectively making Chuck Berry's sound the representative heartbeat of the human race sent into the cosmos. For the black youth of the 1960s, Chuck Berry was proof that they could own the future. He showed that black creativity was not just a subculture, but the very engine of the modern world. He taught a generation that they could be poets of the mundane and kings of the stage, wielding an electric guitar like a scepter. His legacy is the high-voltage wire that connects the blues of the Delta to the stadiums of the world. He remains the definitive prime minister of rock and roll, a man who took the struggle and the rhythm of his people and turned it into a lightning bolt that changed the sound of history forever. Mary Wilson. Mary Wilson was the essential bedrock and the longest-serving member of the Supremes, the group that defined the Motown sound and rewrote the rules for black female entertainers. While Diana Ross was the focal point and Florence Ballard the raw powerhouse, Wilson was the sophisticated anchor whose velvet-toned vocals and impeccable stage presence provided the harmonic stability required for their historic success. She possessed a rare combination of diplomatic grace and steely professional resolve, navigating the internal shifts and external pressures of a group that achieved an unprecedented 12 #1 hits. Wilson was not just a backing singer. She was a co-architect of an image that blended high-fashion glamour with accessible pop perfection, proving that black women could be global icons of elegance. Following the departure of Ross in 1970, Wilson became the de facto leader and custodian of the Supremes' legacy. She fought tirelessly to maintain the group's relevance in a changing musical landscape, leading them through a successful 70s era with hits like Stoned Love. Beyond her musical career, Wilson became a formidable advocate for the rights of legacy artists. Her groundbreaking 1986 memoir, Dream Girl, My Life as a Supreme, shattered the carefully manicured facade of the Motown machine, offering a candid and often painful look at the human cost of stardom. She spent her later years championing the Truth in Music advertising legislation, ensuring that original artists were protected from predatory impersonators. She transformed from a girl group star into a stateswoman of the music industry, protecting the history she helped create. For the black youth of the 1960s, Mary Wilson was a symbol of endurance and poise. She taught a generation that there is immense power in being the glue that holds a movement or a vision together. She showed that longevity is its own form of triumph and that one could maintain their dignity even when the spotlight shifted. Her life was a testament to the fact that being part of a collective does not diminish individual worth. Rather, it amplifies it. Wilson remained a vibrant, active figure until her sudden passing in 2021, leaving behind a legacy that reminds us that behind every great cultural revolution are the steady, reliable hands of those who refuse to let the fire go out. The 1960s was a crucible of transformation, where the rhythmic innovations of James Brown and Marvin Gaye harmonized with the strategic defiance of Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King Jr. At Black Excellence Legends, we believe these icons were not merely individuals, but interconnected forces that shattered the psychological and legal boundaries of oppression. However, as we reflect on their massive sacrifices, a difficult question remains for our modern era. In today's digital age, have we traded the deep, disciplined organizing of the civil rights era for the convenience of performative activism. Has our generation truly honored their legacy of substantive change? Or have we simply turned their struggle into a brand?